The first thing I noticed wasn't Amanda's hand on Derek's thigh under the table. It was how she threw her head back when she laughed at his joke, the same laugh she used to give me 15 years ago. Now it was Derek Wilson's turn to bask in my wife's spotlight, and I was watching it happen from across his ridiculously overpriced smart home while nursing a whiskey that probably cost more than my work boots. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Michael Harris, and I'm 41 years old. I manage construction crews, which means I know how to build things and tear them down. Tonight, watching my wife of 16 years flirt with our neighbor at his annual Christmas party, I was learning which skill I'd need more. Michael, you look like someone pissed in your eggnog. Jessica Wilson appeared beside me, Derek's wife, holding a martini that could have doubled as a weapon. She was sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued, the kind of woman who noticed everything and forgot nothing. Just admiring your husband's hospitality, I said, nodding toward where Derek was refilling Amanda's wine glass for the third time in 20 minutes. His hand lingered on hers as he poured, and she didn't pull away. Jessica's smile could have cut glass. Derek's always been generous with his attention. The party was in full swing around us. Derek had gone all out, twinkling lights everywhere, catered food, a bartender who looked like he belonged in a magazine. The guest list was the usual suburban mix: neighbors, Amanda's real estate colleagues, some of Derek's business contacts, and assorted hangers-on who showed up wherever free alcohol was involved. Mrs. Delaney from down the street was holding court by the fireplace, probably collecting gossip to distribute tomorrow. Claire Martinez, Amanda's business partner, was working the room like she was running for mayor, and there was my crew foreman Logan Murphy, looking uncomfortable in his one good shirt, trying to make conversation with people who'd never set foot on a construction site. But my attention kept drifting back to Amanda and Derek. She was wearing the red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the one she'd claimed was too fancy for anywhere we'd go. Apparently Derek's living room qualified as fancy enough. You know what I love about these parties? I said to Jessica, who was still standing beside me, both of us watching our spouses pretend they weren't flirting with each other across the appetizer table. What's that? Everyone thinks they're being so subtle. Amanda caught me looking and gave me a little wave, like she was greeting a casual acquaintance instead of the man who'd been sharing her bed for 16 years. Derek followed her gaze and raised his glass in my direction with that smug smile he'd perfected, the one that said he owned everything in sight and was considering expanding his collection. I raised my glass back and smiled. Let him think he was winning. The thing about construction work is that you learn to see the weak points in any structure. You develop an eye for where the cracks will show up first, where the foundation is compromised, where a little pressure in the right place can bring the whole thing down. Derek Wilson thought he was solid as a rock. His house was all glass and steel, modern angles and clean lines, the kind of place that looked impressive in magazines but would be hell to heat in a New England winter. Like Derek himself, all surface, no substance, and expensive to maintain. I watched him whisper something in Amanda's ear that made her giggle like a teenager. She touched his arm, letting her fingers linger on his sleeve. Amateur hour. If you're going to have an affair, at least have the decency to be discreet about it. I think I need some air, I announced to no one in particular. Outside, the December night was sharp and clear. Derek's neighbors had gone all out with their Christmas decorations, turning the whole street into a festival of lights and inflatable lawn ornaments. I pulled out my phone and pretended to check messages while I walked around to the side of the house. The smart home had smart windows, which meant they were floor-to-ceiling and offered a perfect view of the living room from multiple angles. I found a spot behind Derek's prize-winning rose bushes where I could see the party, but stay hidden in the shadows. I didn't have to wait long. Amanda and Derek had moved to a quieter corner of the room, near the hallway that led to the guest bedrooms. They were standing closer now, their body language screaming what their mouths weren't saying. Derek said something that made Amanda look around nervously, then nod. I pulled out my phone and started recording as Derek took Amanda's hand and led her down the hallway. They disappeared from view, but I didn't need to see more. I had enough. The cold air felt good against my face as I stood there in Derek's perfect landscaping, holding evidence of my wife's betrayal on a device that cost less than the bottle of wine they'd probably share afterward. 16 years of marriage. 16 years of building a life together, supporting her real estate career when it was struggling, working overtime to pay for the house she wanted, the car she needed, the lifestyle she deserved. And this was my Christmas present. I walked back inside, pocketed my phone, and rejoined the party. Logan was standing by the bar, looking relieved to see a familiar face. "Hell of a party," he said, gesturing around the room with his beer bottle. "Must have cost more than I make in a month." "Derek likes to show off," I said. "Where's Amanda? Thought I saw her earlier." "She's around somewhere, probably networking." Logan nodded. He was a good man, loyal, the kind of guy who showed up early and stayed late, who'd have your back in a fight without asking questions. I'd need men like Logan in the coming weeks. Amanda reappeared 20 minutes later, her hair slightly mussed, her lipstick refreshed. Derek followed a few minutes after that, straightening his tie and wearing the satisfied expression of a man who'd just gotten exactly what he wanted. She came over to me, sliding her arm through mine like nothing had happened. "Ready to go home, honey?" she asked, her voice bright and innocent. "It's getting late." "Sure," I said. "Just let me thank our host." I walked over to Derek, who was pouring himself a scotch that probably cost more than most people's car payments. "Great party, Derek. Really memorable." "Glad you enjoyed it, Mike." He'd never called me Mike before tonight. "We should do this more often. Get together, I mean. The four of us." "Absolutely. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of each other." He smiled that smug smile again, and I smiled right back. He had no idea what was coming. Amanda was quiet on the drive home, staring out the window at the Christmas lights. Our house looked modest compared to Derek's architectural statement, but it was paid for, built solid, and it was ours. Or at least it had been. "Fun party," I said as we pulled into the driveway. "Mm-hmm." Derek seemed in a good mood. She glanced at me, something flickering behind her eyes. "Did he?" I didn't really notice. I parked the car and sat there for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled down. Our house looked different to me now, like I was seeing it through new eyes. The foundation was about to shift, and everything built on top of it was going to have to adjust, or fall down. "Michael, are you coming inside?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm coming." But I wasn't the same man who'd left the house 3 hours earlier. That man had been married to Amanda Harris, had trusted his wife, had believed in the life they'd built together. This man knew better. I didn't sleep. Instead, I lay in bed next to Amanda, listening to her breathe, watching the digital clock count down the hours until dawn. She'd come to bed wearing the silk nightgown I'd given her for her birthday, the one she usually saved for special occasions. Apparently, screwing the neighbor qualified. At 3:17 a.m., her phone buzzed with a text message. She stirred but didn't wake up. The phone was on her nightstand, screen facing up, and in the darkness I could see the notification preview. "Derek, tonight was incredible. Can't wait for—" The message cut off there, but I'd seen enough. I slipped out of bed, padded to the bathroom, and closed the door before I let myself react. My hands were shaking, not from sadness, but from rage so pure it felt like electricity in my veins. I looked at myself in the mirror. Same face I'd had yesterday, same gray creeping in at the temples, same scar on my chin from a construction accident 5 years back. But something fundamental had changed. The man looking back at me wasn't going to roll over and play victim. I knew Amanda's phone passcode. It was our anniversary date, which now seemed like a sick joke. While she slept, I carefully lifted the phone from her nightstand and took it to my workshop in the basement. The basement was my domain, the one place in the house that was purely mine. My tools, my workbench, my old safe where I kept important documents, and some emergency cash. I'd built the workshop myself when we first moved in, back when Amanda thought my handiness was charming instead of embarrassing. I plugged Amanda's phone into my laptop and started copying everything. Text messages, photos, call logs, emails, all of it. The affair had been going on for 3 months based on the message history. 3 months of lunch meetings that weren't about real estate, evening showings of houses that weren't on the market, and increasingly explicit messages that left nothing to imagination. There were photos, too. Amanda had sent Derek pictures of herself in lingerie I'd never seen before. He'd returned the favor with shots that proved he spent too much time at the gym and not enough time developing a personality. The most recent exchange was from yesterday afternoon, while I was at work. Amanda. Looking forward to tonight. Mike suspects nothing. Derek. He's too dumb to figure it out anyway. See you at the party, beautiful. Amanda. We'll have to be careful. Jessica's been watching us. Derek. Let her watch. What's she going to do about it? I copied everything to an encrypted drive, then returned Amanda's phone to her nightstand. She was still sleeping peacefully, probably dreaming about her exciting new romance. By 6 a.m., I was dressed and ready for work. I left Amanda a note saying I had an early meeting and would grab breakfast on the way. The truth was, I needed to think, and I did my best thinking when I was building something. The construction site was a new luxury development on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where Derek's friends would eventually live. My crew wouldn't arrive for another hour, which gave me time to walk the site and plan my next moves. The thing about revenge is that it's like any other construction project. You need a solid foundation, quality materials, and attention to detail. Rush the job, and the whole thing falls apart. Take your time, do it right, and you can build something that lasts. I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer, Jim Brennan. We'd gone to high school together, and he'd handled the legal work when Amanda and I bought the house. Michael, it's 6:30 in the morning. I know. I need to ask you something, and I need you to keep it confidential. Okay, shoot. Hypothetically, if someone wanted to protect their assets in case of a divorce, what would be the best approach? There was a long pause. Jesus, Michael. Is everything okay? Just answer the question, Jim. Well, hypothetically, you'd want to document everything. Income, expenses, assets, debts. Make sure your name is on all the accounts you want to keep. If there's evidence of adultery, that could affect the settlement, depending on how vindictive you want to get. How vindictive is too vindictive? That depends on how good your evidence is and how much you want to spend on attorney fees. The evidence is solid. What about the joint accounts? If your name is on them, you have every right to access the funds, but if you're thinking about divorce, you should talk to Amanda first. Try counseling. Sometimes these things can be worked out. I don't think counseling is going to help this particular problem. Michael, whatever's going on, don't do anything stupid. Call me later and we'll talk properly. I hung up and walked over to where we were pouring a foundation for one of the new houses. The concrete had cured perfectly, solid and level, ready to support whatever was built on top of it. But if you poured it wrong, if you didn't prepare the ground properly or mix the concrete badly, the whole structure would eventually fail. Amanda had poured our marriage foundation wrong. Now it was time to tear it down and start over. My phone rang. Logan's name appeared on the screen. Boss, you at the site already? Yeah, wanted to check on yesterday's pour. How was the rest of that fancy party? I left pretty early. Rich people make me nervous. It was educational. I'll bet. Listen, the concrete delivery for the Morrison house got moved up to this afternoon. We're going to need to prep the forms this morning. I'll be ready. Logan, Do you still have that friend who does private investigation work? Tommy Ricci? Yeah, why? I might need some help with a personal matter, someone who's good with surveillance, maybe some technical stuff. Tommy's your guy. Discreet, professional, reasonable rates. What kind of trouble are you in? The kind that requires careful documentation. Say no more. I'll text you his number. By the time my crew arrived, I had a plan. It wasn't complicated. The best plans never are. I was going to gather evidence, protect my assets, and then systematically destroy the lives of everyone who'd betrayed me, starting with the joint bank account. I drove to the bank during lunch break and withdrew half the money from our savings account. My half, legally speaking. The other half I transferred to a new account in my name only. The checking account was trickier since Amanda's real estate commissions were direct deposited there, but I moved most of the balance to my new account and changed the overdraft protection. Amanda would find out soon enough, but by then it would be too late. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy Ricci. Logan says you need help. Can meet tonight if you want. Discretion guaranteed. I texted back, meet me at Murphy's Bar at 8 p.m. Come alone. Murphy's Bar was the kind of place where construction workers went to complain about their jobs and drink beer that didn't cost $8 a bottle. It was also the kind of place where gossip spread faster than wildfire, which would be useful later. I got home at my usual time to find Amanda in the kitchen, making dinner and humming to herself. She was in a good mood, probably still glowing from her romantic evening with Derek. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, kissing my cheek like she had 1,000 times before. "Productive. How about you? Any interesting showings?" "Just the usual. Oh, I might have to work late tomorrow night. Claire and I are meeting with a new client." "Claire, huh? What time should I expect you home?" "Probably around 10. Don't wait up." I smiled and nodded, making a mental note to have Tommy follow her tomorrow night. If Amanda was going to lie to my face, I wanted documentation of exactly where she was when she was supposed to be working late. We ate dinner like a normal married couple, discussing our days, making small talk about the neighbors, planning for Christmas. Amanda was a good actress. I had to give her credit for that. If I hadn't seen the evidence with my own eyes, I might have believed she was still the woman I'd married. After dinner, I told her I was meeting Logan for a beer to discuss the Morrison project. She seemed relieved to have the evening to herself, probably so she could text Derek without worrying about me looking over her shoulder. Murphy's Bar was exactly what you'd expect from a place with that name: dim lighting, worn wooden floors, and the kind of atmosphere that encouraged honest conversation. Tommy Ricci was waiting in a corner booth, nursing a beer and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Tommy was a small, neat man in his 50s, the kind of guy who blended into crowds and remembered details. He'd been a cop for 20 years before starting his own investigation business, and Logan swore he was the best in the state. "You're Michael Harris?" "That's right. Thanks for meeting me." "Logan says you need surveillance work. What's the situation?" I laid it out for him. Amanda's affair, Derek's smugness, my need for comprehensive documentation before I made my move. Tommy listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. "How long has this been going on?" 3 months that I can prove, maybe longer. "And you want what exactly?" "Everything. Photos, video, audio if possible. Times, dates, locations. I want documentation that would hold up in court." "That's going to cost you. Good surveillance isn't cheap." "How much?" He quoted a figure that made me wince, but it was less than I'd moved out of the joint account that afternoon. "Half up front, half when I deliver the evidence. And Michael, this kind of work can get ugly. Are you sure you want to go down this road?" I thought about Amanda humming in the kitchen, about Derek's smug smile, about 16 years of marriage reduced to late-night text messages and hotel room photos. "I'm sure." "All right then. I'll start tomorrow." We shook hands, and I slid an envelope across the table with his retainer fee. By this time next week, I'd have everything I needed to destroy both of them. The foundation was cracked. Now, it was time to bring down the house. Tommy Ricci worked fast. By Thursday, he had photos of Amanda and Derek entering the Riverside Motel on Route 9, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. By Friday, he had audio recordings of their phone conversations, thanks to some technical wizardry I didn't want to know the details of. The recordings were devastating. Amanda talking about how boring I was, how she deserved better, how Derek made her feel alive again. Derek bragging about his conquest, making crude jokes about my performance based on Amanda's complaints, planning their next rendezvous. But the real gold mine was Derek's confession about his other affairs. Apparently, Amanda wasn't his first conquest among the neighborhood wives. There had been others, Sarah Chen from Maple Street, Linda Rodriguez from the development behind ours, even young Katie Morrison, whose husband was deployed overseas. Derek Wilson wasn't just cheating on his wife, he was running a one-man demolition crew through every marriage in the neighborhood. I sat in my workshop, listening to the recordings and planning my next move. The smart play would be to gather more evidence, file for divorce, and try to salvage what I could from the wreckage of my marriage. But I wasn't feeling particularly smart. I was feeling vengeful. I started with Jessica Wilson. Saturday morning, I printed out the most damning text messages between Amanda and Derek, along with a few choice photos that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. I put everything in a manila envelope with a simple note. Thought you should know. A friend. I drove to the Wilson house and slipped the envelope under their front door while Derek was at his weekly golf game and Jessica was at her yoga class. Then I parked across the street and waited. Jessica arrived home first, carrying her yoga mat and a smoothie that probably cost more than my lunch. She found the envelope immediately, opened it right there on her doorstep, and I watched her face go through a series of expressions: confusion, shock, rage, and finally cold calculation. She went inside, and for about 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then Derek's BMW came roaring up the driveway, and I knew Jessica had called him home early. What followed was better than anything on daytime television. Even with the windows closed, I could hear the screaming from across the street. Jessica's voice, shrill with betrayal and fury. Derek's voice, defensive at first, then angry, then pleading. Then things started flying out the front door. First his golf clubs, scattered across the front lawn like expensive lawn ornaments. Then clothes, suits, shirts, underwear, everything Derek owned, thrown out with the kind of precision that suggested Jessica had been planning this moment for years. The neighbors started coming out to watch. Mrs. Delaney appeared on her front porch, probably taking mental notes for her next gossip session. The Chens emerged from their house, Sarah looking particularly interested in the proceedings. Even the Morrisons came outside, Katie holding her baby and looking nervous. Derek finally appeared, trying to gather his belongings, while Jessica stood in the doorway screaming about his whores and pathetic midlife crisis. She was magnificent in her rage, a woman scorned with a lawyer's vocabulary and a socialite's sense of drama. "And that slut Amanda Harris," Jessica's voice carried across the entire neighborhood. "I knew there was something wrong with that woman. No wonder her husband always looks miserable." I winced at that, but I had to admire Jessica's commitment to public humiliation. Derek was trying to stuff his clothes into his BMW, while Jessica provided running commentary on his failings as a husband, lover, and human being. Then Jessica played her trump card. She came out of the house carrying Derek's laptop and tablet, held them up for the whole neighborhood to see, and smashed them on the driveway. "There's your precious porn collection," she screamed. "Maybe now you can focus on reality." Derek lunged for the broken electronics, and Jessica kicked him in the shin hard enough to send him sprawling across his scattered golf clubs. The neighbors applauded. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "What's all the commotion at the Wilsons? Can you see what's happening?" I texted back, "Looks like they're having a disagreement. I'll find out more later." Derek finally managed to load most of his belongings into his car and drove off, leaving Jessica standing in her doorway like an avenging angel. The neighbors slowly dispersed, but I knew this story would be told and retold for weeks. Phase 1 was complete. Derek's marriage was over, his reputation in the neighborhood was destroyed, and Jessica Wilson was now my unwitting ally in the war against unfaithful spouses. Now it was time to deal with Amanda. I drove home to find her pacing in the living room, phone pressed to her ear, talking in urgent whispers. She hung up when she saw me. "Michael, thank God you're home. Something terrible has happened to Derek and Jessica." "Oh? What kind of terrible?" "They had a huge fight. Jessica threw Derek out of the house. She was screaming about affairs and other women. It was horrible." I made sympathetic noises while Amanda continued her performance as the concerned neighbor. She was good, I had to admit. If I didn't know better, I might have believed she was genuinely shocked by this turn of events. "Did Jessica mention any names?" I asked innocently. Amanda's face went pale. "Names? You said she was screaming about other women. I was just wondering if anyone we know was involved." I don't think so. I mean, I wasn't really listening. It was all so shocking." "I'm sure it was. Where were you when this happened?" I was at the store, getting groceries. I came home and heard all the commotion." I nodded and made a mental note to check our credit card statements. If Amanda had been at the store during Jessica's meltdown, there would be a record of it. If she hadn't, that would be another lie to add to my growing collection. That evening, Amanda claimed she had to work late again. I kissed her goodbye and wished her luck with her client meeting, then called Tommy Ricci. "She just left the house. Can you pick up her trail?" "Already on it. I've been following her since she left the real estate office. She's not going to any client meeting." "Where's she going?" "Derek's holed up at the Extended Stay America on Route 1. Looks like that's where they're planning their reunion." "Get me photos. Everything you can." "You got it." While Tommy did his job, I did mine. I drove to Murphy's Bar, where I knew I'd find Logan and half my crew drowning their sorrows after a long week of work. The bar was crowded, filled with the kind of men who worked with their hands and had opinions about everything. Perfect for what I had in mind. "Michael!" Logan waved me over to a table where he was sitting with 3 other guys from the crew, Danny, Pete, and Big Mike, who wasn't actually big but had earned the nickname by being the loudest complainer on any job site. "Rough day?" Danny asked, sliding over to make room. "You could say that. Did you guys hear about the excitement in my neighborhood today?" That got their attention. I told them about Derek and Jessica's very public breakup, adding just enough detail to make it interesting without revealing my role in the proceedings. "No shit," Big Mike said. "The guy with the fancy house and the BMW?" "That's the one. Turns out he's been screwing half the neighborhood wives." "Jessica Wilson threw him out?" Pete asked. "Good for her. Guy always struck me as a sleaze." "What I don't understand," I said, taking a sip of my beer, "is how these guys think they can get away with it. I mean, don't they realize their wives are going to find out eventually?" "Some people are just stupid," Logan said. "They think they're smarter than everyone else. Or they think their wives are too dumb to figure it out," Danny added. "Speaking of wives," Big Mike said, "how's Amanda taking all the neighborhood drama?" "She's pretty shaken up. I think she's worried about what people will think, you know. Small town, everyone talks." "Amanda's got nothing to worry about," Pete said. "She's one of the good ones." I smiled and nodded, letting them think what they wanted to think. For now. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. "Got what you need. Check your email." I excused myself and stepped outside to check the photos on my phone. Tommy had outdone himself. Clear shots of Amanda entering Derek's hotel room, timestamps showing she'd been there for 3 hours, and a particularly damning photo of Derek answering the door in just a towel. I forwarded the photos to my personal email account, then deleted them from my phone. Evidence secured. When I went back inside, The conversation had moved on to other topics, but I'd planted the seeds I wanted to plant. By Monday morning, everyone would know that Derek Wilson was a serial cheater who'd been caught and humiliated by his wife. And Amanda Harris was about to learn that her secret wasn't as secret as she thought. I got home to find Amanda already in bed, reading a magazine and looking relaxed. Her client meeting had apparently gone well. "How was your evening?" I asked, sitting on the edge of the bed to take off my shoes. "Fine. Long but productive. How about you? Did you find out what happened with the Wilsons?" "Just the usual gossip. Apparently Derek's been cheating and Jessica found out. Can't say I'm surprised." Amanda's magazine trembled slightly in her hands. "Really? That's terrible." "Is it? I mean, if someone's cheating on their spouse, don't they deserve whatever consequences come their way?" "I suppose. But it's still sad when a marriage ends. Especially when there are innocent people who get hurt in the process." Amanda looked at me over her magazine, something flickering in her eyes. "What do you mean?" "Oh, just that affairs don't happen in a vacuum. There are always other people involved, friends, neighbors, family members. Everyone gets dragged into the mess." I hadn't thought about it that way. "It's like a house fire," I continued, warming to my theme. "It never just burns down one room. The damage spreads, and by the time it's over, everything's destroyed." Amanda set down her magazine and turned off her bedside lamp. "I'm tired, Michael. Can we talk about something else tomorrow?" "Of course, honey. Sweet dreams." But as I lay there in the dark, listening to Amanda's breathing gradually slow into sleep, I knew her dreams wouldn't be sweet for much longer. The fire was just getting started. Monday morning brought the first real test of my new strategy. Amanda's credit card was declined at her usual coffee shop, and she called me in a panic while I was reviewing blueprints at the construction site. "Michael, there's something wrong with our account. My card isn't working." "That's strange. Let me call the bank and see what's going on." Of course, I knew exactly what was going on. I'd moved most of our money to accounts she couldn't access, leaving just enough in the joint account to cover the mortgage and utilities. Amanda's expensive coffee habit and designer shopping sprees would have to wait. "I'm sure it's just a computer glitch," I told her. "Use cash for now, and I'll sort it out this afternoon." "I don't have any cash, Michael. You know I never carry cash." "There's an ATM at the bank. I'm sure you can figure it out." I hung up and went back to work, but my phone kept buzzing with increasingly frantic texts from Amanda. The ATM would only let her withdraw $200. The bank said she'd need to speak with me about the account changes. Her credit card was also maxed out, which was impossible because we always paid it off every month. Except I'd stopped paying it off. In fact, I'd used it to pay Tommy Ricci's fee and buy some new tools I'd been wanting. Amanda's shopping addiction had finally caught up with her, just not in the way she expected. By lunchtime, she was desperate enough to drive to the construction site, something she'd never done in 16 years of marriage. I saw her BMW pull up to the trailer I used as an on-site office, and I knew the real confrontation was about to begin. She stormed into the trailer wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Michael, what the hell is going on with our money?" "Keep your voice down," I said calmly, not looking up from the permit applications I was reviewing. "This is a workplace." "Don't tell me to keep my voice down. I've been humiliated at 3 different stores today because our cards don't work. The bank won't tell me anything without you being there. What did you do?" I finally looked up at her, taking in her perfectly styled hair, her flawless makeup, her expensive clothes, all of it paid for with money I'd earned while she was screwing the neighbor. "I reorganized our finances, made some adjustments to protect our assets." "Protect them from what?" "From people who might try to take advantage of us." Amanda's eyes narrowed. She was smart enough to know there was more to this story, but not quite smart enough to figure out how much I knew. "This is ridiculous, Michael. I need access to our money. I have expenses, obligations. I can't function like this." What kind of expenses? You know what kind. Gas, groceries, clothes, the usual things. Clothes? Didn't you just buy a new wardrobe last month? That was for work. I need to look professional. Right. Professional. Well, I'm sure your clients appreciate the effort you put into your appearance. Something in my tone must have warned her, because she took a step back and crossed her arms defensively. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing at all. I'm just saying you've been working a lot of late nights lately. All those client meetings and property showings. Must be exhausting. It is exhausting. That's why I don't need the additional stress of not being able to access our money. I stood up and walked around the desk until I was standing directly in front of her. She had to tilt her head back to look at me, which put her at a psychological disadvantage. Construction work keeps you in shape, and I had 6 inches and 40 pounds on my wife. Amanda, I need you to listen to me very carefully. The money situation is temporary. I'm restructuring our accounts for tax purposes. It'll all be sorted out by the end of the week. Tax purposes? Jim Brennan suggested it. Something about protecting our assets in case of any legal issues. What legal issues? You never know in the construction business. Liability, insurance claims, that sort of thing. It's just a precaution. She wanted to argue. I could see it in her eyes, but she couldn't quite figure out how to challenge my explanation without revealing why she really needed access to large amounts of cash. Hotel rooms weren't cheap, and neither were the gifts Derek probably expected. Fine, she said finally, but I need money for groceries and gas. I can't live on $200. I pulled out my wallet and handed her $300 in cash. This should cover your immediate needs. She took the money, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. Cash meant no paper trail, no way to track her spending. She was probably already planning how to use it to fund her affair. Where did this cash come from? I've been keeping some emergency money in the safe, in case something happens to the banks. Another lie, but a plausible one. Amanda knew I didn't trust financial institutions completely, a holdover from growing up in a family that had lost everything in the 2008 crash. She left without saying goodbye, and I watched her BMW disappear down the access road. Phase 2 was complete. Amanda was now financially dependent on me, which would make it much harder for her to plan any kind of exit strategy. My phone rang. Tommy Ricci. Your wife just left Derek's hotel. She was there for 2 hours in the middle of the day. Want to guess what they were discussing? Let me guess. Derek's sudden homelessness and Amanda's sudden poverty? That'd be my bet. Derek looked pretty stressed when she left. Kept pacing around the parking lot, making phone calls. Any idea who he was calling? I got some photos of him on the phone, but I couldn't get close enough for audio. Want me to keep following him? Yeah, but be careful. If he's desperate, he might do something stupid. Desperate men usually do. I'll keep you posted. I spent the rest of the afternoon pretending to work, while actually planning my next move. Amanda and Derek were under pressure now, which meant they'd start making mistakes. Desperate people always did. That evening, Amanda was unusually quiet during dinner. She kept checking her phone, probably waiting for messages from Derek, but whatever he was telling her wasn't making her happy. Everything okay? I asked, cutting into the steak I'd grilled on our back deck. Fine, just tired. How was your day? After our little financial hiccup, I mean. It was fine, Michael. I managed. Good. I knew you would. You're resourceful. She looked at me sharply, but I kept my expression neutral. Let her wonder how much I knew. After dinner, I told her I was going to Murphy's bar to meet Logan about a job we were bidding on. She seemed relieved to have me out of the house, probably so she could call Derek and plan their next move. Murphy's was busy for a Monday night, filled with the usual crowd of construction workers, mechanics, and other blue-collar guys who worked hard and drank harder. I found Logan at his usual spot at the bar, nursing a beer and complaining about the Patriots' chances this season. How's married life treating you? He asked as I sat down. Can't complain. Well, I could, but what's the point? That's the spirit. Hey, did you hear the latest about that Derek Wilson situation? My ears perked up. What about it? My buddy Tommy, you remember Tommy Ricci? He was at the Extended Stay America today, and he saw Wilson there with some woman. Broad daylight, middle of the day. Guy's got no shame. Really? What did the woman look like? Tommy said she was a looker, well-dressed, expensive car. Probably another one of his neighborhood conquests. I nodded sympathetically, while inside I was smiling. Tommy was earning his fee and then some, spreading carefully crafted gossip while gathering intelligence. Poor Jessica, I said. Bad enough to find out your husband's cheating, but to have it be this public. Yeah, the whole neighborhood's talking about it. My wife heard from her sister, who heard from Mrs. Chen, that Wilson's been working his way through half the married women in town. No kidding. Anyone we know? Well, there are rumors, but you know how people talk. Probably just gossip. But Logan's expression suggested he knew more than he was saying, and I filed that information away for later use. In a town this size, secrets didn't stay secret for long. I bought Logan another beer and steered the conversation toward safer topics. Work, sports, the weather. But I could see him processing what he'd learned about Derek Wilson, adding it to his own observations and drawing conclusions. By the time I got home, Amanda was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. But I could tell from her breathing that she was faking it, probably hoping to avoid any awkward questions about her day. I lay in the dark next to my cheating wife, listening to her pretend to sleep, and planned my next move. Amanda and Derek thought they were playing a sophisticated adult game of deception and desire. They had no idea they were actually starring in their own destruction. By Wednesday, the gossip network had done its work. Everyone in town knew that Derek Wilson was a serial cheater who'd been thrown out by his wife, and speculation was running wild about which local women had been involved with him. I was having coffee at Mel's Diner, the kind of place where construction workers and retirees gathered to solve the world's problems over eggs and hash browns, when I overheard a conversation that told me everything I needed to know about how the story was spreading. I heard it was that Rodriguez woman from Maple Street, said Frank Kowalski, a retired plumber who knew everyone's business. You know, the one with the fancy garden and the husband who travels for work? Nah, replied his breakfast companion, a guy named Eddie who drove truck for the lumber yard. My money's on the Morrison girl, young, pretty, husband deployed overseas, easy target for a predator like Wilson. Could be both, Frank suggested. Guy like that doesn't stop at one affair. I sipped my coffee and listened to them speculate, neither of them mentioning Amanda's name. Yet. But it was only a matter of time before someone connected the dots. That afternoon, I got the call I'd been expecting. Michael, it's Jessica Wilson. I was wondering if we could talk. Jessica's voice was controlled, but I could hear the steel underneath. She was a woman on a mission, and I had a pretty good idea what that mission was. Of course, Jessica. What can I do for you? I'd rather not discuss this over the phone. Could you meet me somewhere? Maybe that coffee shop on Main Street? I'll be there in 20 minutes. The coffee shop was busy with the afternoon crowd, but Jessica had chosen a corner table where we could talk privately. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, but her eyes were sharp and focused. This was a woman who'd moved past grief and anger into something more dangerous. Cold calculation. Thank you for meeting me, she said as I sat down. I know this is awkward, given the circumstances. Not awkward at all. How are you holding up? I've been better. Michael, I'm going to be direct with you because I think you deserve to know the truth. Here it comes, I thought. What truth is that? Derek has been having an affair with Amanda. I let my face register shock, then confusion, then the dawning horror of a man whose world was falling apart. It wasn't hard to fake. I'd been practicing the expression in the mirror for days. That's impossible. Amanda would never. I have proof. Jessica slid a manila folder across the table. Photos, text messages, credit card receipts. They've been meeting at hotels for months. I opened the folder with trembling hands, looking at the same evidence Tommy Ricci had gathered for me, the same evidence I'd used to destroy Derek's marriage. But Jessica didn't need to know that. "Oh, God," I whispered, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Oh, God, Amanda. I'm sorry, Michael. I know this is devastating, but I thought you had a right to know." I closed the folder and looked at Jessica with what I hoped was gratitude mixed with devastation. "Why are you telling me this? I mean, your marriage is over. You could have just moved on." "Because Derek destroyed my life, and he's destroying yours too. And because Amanda helped him do it." Jessica's voice was ice cold now. "I want them both to pay for what they've done." "What do you mean, pay?" "I mean, I want everyone in this town to know exactly what kind of people they are. I want their reputations destroyed. I want them to feel the same humiliation and betrayal they put us through." I pretended to think about it, letting Jessica believe she was convincing me to join her crusade for revenge. In reality, she was offering to do exactly what I'd been planning to do myself. "I don't know, Jessica. I mean, I'm angry, but making it public, that would hurt me too. People would know that I couldn't, that you couldn't what? Keep your wife satisfied?" Jessica leaned forward, her eyes blazing. "Michael, this isn't about your adequacy as a husband. This is about two selfish people who decided their pleasure was more important than their commitments, their families, their community. But if everyone knows, everyone's going to know anyway. In a town this size, you can't keep secrets like this. The only question is whether you control the narrative or let them control it." She was right, of course, and she was offering to be the public face of the revenge campaign, which would keep my hands relatively clean. "What did you have in mind?" Jessica smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "The annual charity auction is this Saturday night. Everyone will be there, all the people Derek and Amanda have been lying to for months. I think it's time they learned the truth." "At the charity auction?" "Jessica, that's nuclear." "Good, they deserve nuclear." I pretended to wrestle with the decision, letting Jessica think she was convincing me to abandon my moral high ground. Finally, I nodded reluctantly. "Okay, but I don't want to be the one who... I can't stand up there and... You won't have to. I'll handle everything. You just need to be there to confirm the story when people ask." We spent another hour planning the details. Jessica had thought this through carefully. She knew exactly how to maximum the impact and minimize the legal consequences. She'd been married to Derek for 15 years. She knew how to hurt him where it would do the most damage. That evening, I went home to find Amanda in full panic mode. She was pacing around the living room, phone in hand, looking like a woman who'd just learned her world was about to end. "Michael, thank God you're home. Something terrible is happening." "What now?" "Jessica Wilson has been calling people, spreading lies about me and Derek. She's telling everyone that we had an affair." I sat down heavily in my recliner, like a man who'd just received devastating news. "What? That's crazy. Why would she say something like that?" "Because she's vindictive and bitter, and she wants to destroy everyone around her." "But why would she pick you? If she wanted to spread lies about Derek's affairs, why not pick someone else?" Amanda's face went pale. "I don't know. Maybe because we're neighbors? Maybe because she's jealous of me?" "Jealous of what?" "I don't know, Michael. I don't know why people do crazy things." I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out how much Jessica knew, how much she could prove, how much damage control was possible. "What exactly is Jessica saying?" She's saying that Derek and I have been meeting at hotels, that we've been having an affair for months. She claims she has proof." "What kind of proof?" "Photos, apparently, and text messages." "Well, that's easy enough to disprove, right? If you haven't been having an affair, there can't be any real evidence." Amanda was quiet for a long moment, probably trying to figure out how to explain away evidence she knew existed. The thing is, Michael, Derek and I have worked together on some real estate deals. We've had meetings, lunches, that sort of thing. Jessica could have taken those interactions out of context. Meetings at hotels? Sometimes clients want to meet at neutral locations. Hotels have conference rooms, quiet spaces to talk. It was a good story, I had to admit. If I didn't know the truth, I might have believed it. So, what do you want to do? I think we should ignore it. Jessica's obviously having a breakdown. If we don't respond, if we don't give her any ammunition, maybe she'll move on to someone else. And if she doesn't move on? Then we'll deal with it when we have to. But Amanda's phone kept buzzing throughout the evening, and each text message made her more agitated. Word was spreading, and by Saturday night, everyone in town would be talking about Amanda Harris and Derek Wilson. I went to bed that night, knowing that in 3 days, my wife's reputation would be destroyed, her career would be over, and her affair would be the biggest scandal our little town had seen in years. And the best part was, it would all look like Jessica Wilson's idea. Saturday night arrived with the kind of crisp December air that made everything seem sharper, more defined. The annual charity auction was being held at the Riverside Country Club, the kind of place where our town's elite gathered to feel good about themselves while writing tax-deductible checks. Amanda spent 2 hours getting ready, trying on 3 different dresses before settling on a conservative black number that she hoped would make her look respectable and wronged. She was nervous. I could see it in the way she kept checking her makeup, adjusting her jewelry, practicing innocent expressions in the mirror. "Maybe we shouldn't go," she said for the 3rd time as we drove to the country club. "I'm not feeling well. We could just stay home, make a donation online." "We have to go," I replied, keeping my voice gentle but firm. "If we don't show up, it'll look like we're admitting guilt. The best thing we can do is act normal. Let people see that we have nothing to hide." Amanda nodded, but her hands were shaking as she applied lipstick in the passenger seat mirror. She knew tonight was going to be a disaster. She just didn't know how big a disaster. The country club was decorated for Christmas, all twinkling lights and elegant wreaths. The auction items were displayed on tables around the ballroom, vacation packages, restaurant gift certificates, artwork donated by local artists. It was the kind of wholesome community event that made everyone feel good about living in a small town. At least, it usually was. We'd barely walked through the door when I spotted Jessica Wilson across the room, surrounded by a small group of women who were listening intently to whatever she was saying. She was wearing a red dress that made her look like an avenging angel, and her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Oh God," Amanda whispered. "She's already talking to people." "Just stay calm," I said, taking her arm. "Remember, you have nothing to be ashamed of." But as we made our way through the crowd, I could feel the stares, hear the whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when we passed. Jessica had been busy, and the gossip network had done its job. We found seats at a table with the Morrisons and the Chens, neighbors who'd always been friendly, but who now seemed distant and uncomfortable. Katie Morrison barely made eye contact with Amanda, while her husband Steve kept glancing between Amanda and the exit like he was planning an escape route. "Lovely evening," Sarah Chen said, with the kind of forced politeness that meant she knew exactly why everyone was staring at us. "Yes, it is," Amanda replied, her voice tight with strain. "The decorations are beautiful this year." The auction began with the usual speeches from local dignitaries and charity organizers. I watched Jessica during the opening remarks, saw her checking her watch, whispering to her allies. She was waiting for the right moment, building suspense like a master storyteller. The moment came during the silent auction portion of the evening, when people were milling around, examining the items and placing bids. Jessica stood up at her table and tapped her wine glass with a spoon, the sound cutting through the conversation like a knife. "Excuse me, everyone. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have something important to say." The room gradually fell silent, all eyes turning to Jessica. She looked magnificent in her righteous fury, a woman who'd been wronged and was finally ready to set the record straight. "Most of you know that my husband Derek and I are getting divorced," she began, her voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. "What you might not know is why." Amanda grabbed my arm. "Stop her," she whispered. "Do something." But there was nothing I could do. Jessica was just getting started. 2 weeks ago, I discovered that Derek has been having affairs, multiple affairs, with multiple women in our community. Women who smiled at me in the grocery store, who came to my dinner parties, who pretended to be my friends while they were sleeping with my husband. The room was silent now, everyone hanging on Jessica's every word. I could see people pulling out their phones, probably recording this for posterity. "I have proof," Jessica continued, pulling out a thick folder. "Photos, text messages, hotel receipts, evidence of a pattern of deception and betrayal that goes back months." She opened the folder and held up a photograph, large enough for people in the front rows to see clearly. It was Amanda and Derek entering the Riverside Motel, timestamp clearly visible. "This photo was taken 3 days ago," Jessica announced. "That's my husband Derek Wilson, and that's Amanda Harris, the wife of Michael Harris, who's sitting right over there." Every head in the room turned to look at our table. Amanda made a sound like a wounded animal and tried to stand up, but I put my hand on her shoulder and held her in place. "There are more photos," Jessica continued, flipping through the folder. "Dozens of them. Text messages where Amanda calls her husband boring and pathetic. Messages where Derek brags about his conquests to his friends. This is insane." Amanda finally found her voice. "She's making this up. She's having a breakdown, and she's trying to destroy innocent people." "Innocent?" Jessica laughed, and it was not a pleasant sound. "Amanda, you sent my husband naked pictures of yourself. You met him in hotel rooms while your husband was at work. You told him you were planning to leave Michael as soon as you figured out how to get half his money." That last part was news to me, but I filed it away for later consideration. Jessica was improvising now, adding details that might or might not be true, but sounded plausible enough to devastate Amanda's credibility. "I never said that," Amanda protested, but her voice was weak, unconvincing. "Really?" Jessica pulled out her phone and held it up. "Because I have the audio recording right here. Derek kept copies of your voice messages, Amanda. Would you like me to play them for everyone?" Amanda went white as a sheet. I didn't know if Jessica actually had audio recordings, but Amanda clearly believed she did. The room erupted in whispered conversations as people processed what they'd just learned. I saw Claire Martinez, Amanda's business partner, staring at us with horror and disgust. I saw Mrs. Delaney frantically texting someone, probably spreading the news to anyone who wasn't here tonight. "This is a private matter." I finally stood up, playing my role as the devastated husband trying to maintain some dignity. "Jessica, I understand you're hurt, but this isn't the place for—" "Isn't it?" Jessica turned her attention to me, and for a moment I was afraid she'd figured out my role in all this. "Michael, these people deserve to know what kind of woman Amanda really is. She's been lying to all of us, using our community as cover for her sordid affair." "That's enough." Amanda stood up, her face flushed with humiliation and rage. "I don't have to listen to this. Come on, Michael, we're leaving." But as we tried to make our way to the exit, Jessica played her final card. "There's something else everyone should know," she called out, stopping us in our tracks. "Amanda isn't Derek's only victim. He's been working his way through the neighborhood for months. Sarah Chen, Linda Rodriguez, even young Katie Morrison." The room exploded. Sarah Chen stood up, shouting denials. Katie Morrison burst into tears. Linda Rodriguez, who wasn't even at the auction, would probably hear about this before midnight. And in the chaos, Amanda and I finally made our escape. We drove home in silence, Amanda staring out the window while I processed what had just happened. Jessica had exceeded my wildest expectations, destroying not just Amanda and Derek, but half a dozen other reputations in the process. "It's over," Amanda said quietly as we pulled into our driveway. "My career, my reputation, everything, it's all over." "Maybe not," I said, still playing the supportive husband. "People have short memories. This will blow over." "No, it won't. Not in a town this size, not after what just happened." She was right, of course. By tomorrow morning, everyone in town would know about Amanda's affair. Her real estate career was finished. Who would trust a woman who'd been publicly exposed as a liar and a cheat? Her social life was over. What wife would want Amanda Harris around her husband? We went inside, and Amanda immediately poured herself a large glass of wine, then another. I watched her drink herself into a stupor while I pretended to be processing my own devastation. "I'm sorry, Michael," she said finally, the alcohol making her sloppy and maudlin. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." "What exactly happened, Amanda? I mean, is any of what Jessica said true?" She looked at me with bleary eyes, trying to decide how much to admit. "Some of it. Derek and we got close, too close. But it wasn't like she made it sound. It wasn't sordid or calculated. It just happened." "How long?" "A few months. It started as just friendship, then it became something more." "And the hotels?" Amanda closed her eyes. "Yes. We met at hotels sometimes. But it wasn't about the closure, Michael. It was about feeling alive again, feeling desired. And I didn't make you feel desired. You made me feel safe, comfortable, but not desired. Not like Derek did." It was probably the most honest thing she'd said to me in months, and it hurt more than I'd expected. But it also confirmed everything I'd suspected about her motivations. "What happens now?" I asked. "I don't know. Derek's probably going to leave town after tonight. His business is ruined. His reputation is destroyed. He'll have to start over somewhere else." "And what about us?" Amanda looked at me with something that might have been hope. Is there any chance we could work through this? Get counseling? Maybe start over?" I pretended to consider it, letting her think there might be a path back from the destruction she'd caused. "I don't know, Amanda. This is a lot to process. Maybe we should take some time apart, figure out what we really want." "Time apart? You could stay with your sister in Boston for a while, let things cool down here, give me space to think. And then we'll see." It was a lie, of course. There would be no reconciliation, no second chances, no happily ever after. But Amanda was too drunk and too devastated to see through my performance. She went to bed that night believing she might still salvage something from the wreckage of her life. She was wrong. Sunday morning brought a parade of phone calls, text messages, and unexpected visitors, all wanting to know more details about the previous night's spectacular meltdown. Amanda ignored them all, staying in bed with the covers pulled over her head while I played the role of the shell-shocked husband trying to hold his life together. Claire Martinez showed up at 10 a.m. looking like she'd rather be anywhere else in the world. "Michael, I'm so sorry about last night. I had no idea." "None of us did, Claire. Come in, have some coffee." We sat in my kitchen while Claire explained that the real estate office was in crisis mode. 3 clients had already called to cancel their contracts with Amanda, and 2 more were threatening to sue if their property information had been shared with Derek Wilson during pillow talk. "I'm going to have to suspend Amanda's license pending an investigation," Claire said, not meeting my eyes. "The state board takes this kind of thing seriously. Trust is everything in this business." "I understand. You have to protect yourself." "Is there anything I can do? For you, I mean. This must be devastating." "I'm managing. Taking it one day at a time." After Claire left, I called Tommy Ricci. "Hell of a show last night," he said. "Jessica Wilson doesn't mess around." Did you get everything recorded? Every word. Plus, I got some great shots of the audience reactions. The Chen woman looked like she was going to have a stroke. What about Derek? Any word on his plans? He checked out of the extended stay this morning. Looked like he was in a hurry. My guess is he's leaving town probably today. Good. What about Amanda? Any contact between them since last night? Nothing I can detect. I think they're both too scared to communicate right now. I spent the rest of Sunday fielding calls and visitors, all of them offering sympathy while fishing for more details about my wife's affair. By evening, I was exhausted from playing the victim, but the performance was almost over. Monday morning, Amanda finally emerged from the bedroom, looking like she'd aged 10 years in 2 days. I need to go to the office, she said. Try to salvage what I can. Claire was here yesterday. She had to suspend your license. Amanda's face crumpled. My license? But that's my career. That's everything I've worked for. I'm sorry, Amanda, but you have to understand people don't trust you anymore. This is all Jessica's fault. She destroyed my life out of spite. Did she? Or did you destroy it yourself when you decided to have an affair? Amanda stared at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. Something in my tone had changed, and she was finally starting to notice. What's that supposed to mean? It means actions have consequences. You made choices, Amanda. Bad choices. Now you have to live with the results. You're angry. I understand that. But we can work through this, Michael. We can rebuild. Can we? Because I'm not sure I want to rebuild with someone I can't trust. You can trust me. The affair is over. Derek's leaving town. It'll never happen again. How do I know that? How do I know you won't just find someone else to make you feel alive when you get bored with me again? Amanda sat down at the kitchen table and put her head in her hands. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to make this right. Maybe you can't make it right. Maybe some things are too broken to fix. I let that sink in while I poured myself a cup of coffee. Amanda was finally starting to understand that her marriage was over, that there would be no forgiveness, no second chances. What are you saying, Michael? I'm saying I think you should go stay with your sister for a while. Give us both some space to figure out what comes next. And if I don't want to go, then I'll file for divorce and you can explain to a judge why you should get half of everything I've worked for while you were screwing the neighbor. The words hit her like a physical blow. She'd been holding on to hope that she could manipulate me into forgiveness, that her tears and apologies would be enough to save her marriage. You've already talked to a lawyer, haven't you? I've talked to several lawyers, Amanda. They all say the same thing. Adultery changes everything in a divorce settlement. What do you want from me? I want you to sign a separation agreement. You take your personal belongings and your car, and you leave. In exchange, I won't contest the divorce or pursue you for the money you've cost me. What money? I pulled out a folder I'd prepared, filled with credit card statements, bank records, and receipts. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, gifts for Derek, new clothes for your affair wardrobe. It adds up to about $15,000 over the past 3 months. Amanda's face went white. You've been tracking my spending? I've been protecting myself, which is more than I can say for you. Michael, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, rebuild the trust. No, we can't. Because I don't love you anymore, Amanda. I don't even like you. You're selfish, dishonest, and cruel. The only reason I stayed married to you this long is because I didn't know who you really were. And now, you do? Now, I do. You're the kind of person who destroys everything good in her life because she's never satisfied, never grateful, never enough. You had a husband who loved you, a comfortable life, a successful career, and you threw it all away for what? A few afternoons with a loser like Derek Wilson? Amanda started crying, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of self-pity. The kind of crying someone does when they finally realize they're not going to get their way. "I'll fight you," she said through her tears. "I'll get my own lawyer. I'll take half of everything." "Go ahead, but remember, I have evidence of your affair. Photos, text messages, financial records, and after Saturday night, I have about 200 witnesses who heard Jessica Wilson lay out your betrayal in detail." "That was all lies and speculation." "Was it? Because I also have this." I pulled out my phone and played one of Tommy Ricci's audio recordings, Amanda's voice, clear as day, telling Derek how boring her husband was and how she couldn't wait to start a new life with him. Amanda's face went ashen. "How did you get that? Does it matter? The point is, I have everything I need to destroy you in court. Your only choice is to take the deal I'm offering and walk away with some dignity intact." "What deal?" I slid the separation agreement across the table. "You sign this, pack your things, and leave town. In exchange, I won't pursue you for damages, and I won't release the more explicit recordings and photos to the internet." "There are more explicit recordings?" "Oh, Amanda, you have no idea what I have." She read through the agreement with shaking hands. It was generous, considering the circumstances. She'd get her car, her personal belongings, and enough money to start over somewhere else. But she'd get nothing from our house, our investments, or my business. "This is everything I have," she whispered. "No, this is everything you have left. You threw away everything else when you decided Derek Wilson was more important than your marriage." Amanda signed the papers with tears streaming down her face. It was the last time I would see her cry, and I felt nothing but satisfaction watching her realize that her choices had consequences. She packed 2 suitcases and loaded them into her BMW. I watched from the kitchen window as she drove away, probably heading to her sister's house in Boston, where she'd have to explain how she'd lost her husband, her career, and her reputation in a single weekend. That evening, I sat in my workshop, surrounded by the tools and projects that had always brought me peace. The house was quiet for the first time in months. No more whispered phone calls, no more lies, no more pretending everything was fine. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy Ricci. "Derek Wilson left town this afternoon. Saw him loading his car at the storage unit. Looked like he was planning to drive for a while." I texted back, "Good. Send me your final bill." Another text, this one from Jessica Wilson. "Heard Amanda left town. Hope you're doing okay." I replied, "Taking it one day at a time. Thank you for everything." She'd never know how much she'd helped me, how perfectly she'd played her role in Amanda's destruction. Jessica Wilson had been the perfect weapon, angry, articulate, and completely believable in her righteous fury. I poured myself a scotch and walked out onto my back deck, looking out over the neighborhood where I'd lived for 16 years. The Wilson house was dark, a for sale sign already planted in the front yard. The other houses looked the same as always, but I knew the people inside were different now, changed by what they'd witnessed at the charity auction. Some of them probably felt sorry for me, the poor husband who'd been betrayed and humiliated. Others might wonder if I'd somehow deserved what happened, if I'd been a bad husband who'd driven Amanda into another man's arms. They were all wrong. I wasn't a victim, and I wasn't a villain. I was just a man who'd learned that sometimes the best way to build something new is to tear down what came before. Amanda Harris had made her choices. Derek Wilson had made his choices. Jessica Wilson had made hers. And I had made mine. The foundation was cracked, the structure was unsound, and the whole thing had to come down. But now I had a clean lot to work with, solid ground to build on, and all the time in the world to get it right. I raised my glass to the empty Wilson house, to Amanda's abandoned dreams, to the wreckage of 16 years of marriage. "Here's to new beginnings," I said to the winter night, and for the first time in months, I smiled and meant it.